Hello, aspirants. Welcome to PW OnlyIAS. I'm your head precinct with a daily analysis of the Hindu from 30th of October 2024. Let's begin today's analysis. So, the topics that we have taken for today's analysis are from the mains perspective, Indo-Sri Lankan fishermen issue, PMLA issue, SVGT guidelines, exit polls issues, growing economic divide, that is the editorial that has been taken, Ayurveda Divas, CRS app, Bandhavgarh, again, a very important place with respect to your tigers. Royal Bengal tigers are found here in Madhya Pradesh. NPPA, UNRWA, and International Organization for Migration, that is on page number 15. So we'll be seeing all these things which are very, very important for your examination. Let's analyze them in detail. Let's begin. The main topics we're taking first. Topic number 1, page number 3. This basically says India calls for early meeting with Sri Lanka to discuss the issues connecting the fishermen. Now, this is something that repeatedly comes in your newspapers, that certain fishermen have been caught by the Indian fishermen have been caught by the Sri Lankan coast guards. And then again, there are certain disputes that are arising out of it. And then after some times again, meetings are held and then the fishermen are released. This is something, a very regular activity that takes place. In order to understand what is going on, we need to understand certain aspects why this happens. See, if you see the Sri Lankan, this is Sri Lanka, this is a Tamil Nadu region, you have an island that is Kachathevu, and this is Rameshwaram, right? Now, this is small dotted line that has been created. This is out of an agreement which we will see, that is Indo-Sri Lanka maritime boundary. Now, what generally happens over here is, when the fishermen from this region of Tamil Nadu basically come here, there is no, in the sea, you do not have a proper demarcation that is present. They do not, it is not like a land boundary where you can fence it. So what happens? Fishermen from here generally traveling. So what happens? They tend to cross this boundary. And once they tend to cross this boundary, they come into the region which is belonging to Sri Lanka. Now, the coast guards are bound by law and they tend to obviously arrest them. This very often happens because of the lack of awareness. And obviously, when they are fishing, they feel that this is a region, probably they will get more fish. So they tend to get drawn towards this region. And what happens? Again, getting caught. We'll be seeing certain dimensions. We'll come back to this map again and see what are the background of it. And then we'll move ahead. See, first of all, let us see the issues. There were certain maritime boundary agreements that were basically brought into consensus, agreed between India and Sri Lanka. Because of that, certain dimensions came up. This boundary agreement basically came up because before also the fishermen issue was persisting. So they said, what shall we do? Let us come to some agreement. So what happened? There were two agreements, major agreements. One was 1974 agreement. With respect, it basically said we are going to respect each other's sovereignty and integrity. Second is only navigational rights over the vessels to each other's water to be preserved. That means, please understand, this is very important. For navigation, if someone, let us say some vessel is moving in this region, let us see a vessel is moving in this region or Sri Lankan vessel is moving to Indian water, that is fine, but not for fishing. Why? Because there are concerns with respect to the environment and also with respect to the fishermen who belong to Sri Lanka. Because let us say Indian fishermen might be having little better instrument to catch the fish. They also do bottom trawling that we will see. So what happens? Because of those activities, the Sri Lankan fishermen are not able to get enough catch of the fishes. So to prevent that, they said only the navigation or for the purpose of navigation, you can move to each other's maritime boundary, not for the fishing purpose. This was again agreed. Now, one more thing that happened in 1974 was Kachathevu Island was given to Sri Lanka as a gesture. Now see here, there is an island over here. Now this was again a lot of debate. Even the state of Tamil Nadu basically protested against it. Many protests were there that you should not give, but it was like a gesture towards a friendly country, Sri Lanka, that this island was given to Sri Lanka. That is why you realize this. It is inside the boundary of the Indo-Sri Lankan maritime boundary. So this island was earlier belonging to India, but given to Sri Lanka. Now, what happens? See, under this agreement, there were certain activities that were allowed for fishermen. That means, what were the aspects with respect to fishermen that were allowed in this region: resting and net drying. That means, let us assume a fisherman of Indian origin is moving on here. He might be here not fishing but resting. Or for that matter, even in the Kachuthevu island also you can rest. For purpose of, let us say, religious visit can be there, but not for the fishing purpose. Let us say there's a important church over here, festivals are being celebrated here. So the fishermen or fishermen communities can come to this region. They can rest. They can dry their nets also, but not indulge in fishing. This was again one aspect. Now see another thing. Prohibited activities for the Indian fishermen on the Kachuthevu island. Now see, fishing vessels and fishermen of India shall not engage in fishing of the historical waters, territorial sets, or the exclusive economic zone. So what happened? When this island was given, along with this, under the 1974 agreement also, certain things were decided that what the Indian fishermen can do. Earlier, historically, what used to happen is, this was an island that was belonging to India. So many fishermen used to come here, rest here, catch the fishes, again go. So that means this was a means of a resting place also, along with the cultural activities and the cultural aspects, because here you have a church also, which is important and people go there for worship. So what we realized to say over here, that you can come here for worship purpose, you can rest, you can dry your net, the fisherman can dry, but not indulge in fishing activities around this. This was again a consensus that came under what? Under the 1974 agreement. Now, in spite of this, the activities related to the fishing and again dispute between both the fishermen of both the countries started increasing in spite of that. Again, when the Indian fishermen used to cross the maritime boundary region, so what happened? There used to be again problem or issues. We were entering the region of the Sri Lanka. So now what happened? Please see. Now, one more thing has to be understood, that when we see this boundary, this basically came out in the year 1976. Right? Now please understand. Till 1974, Kachathevu Island was given to Sri Lanka. But a proper demarcation, whether this is the boundary, this is the region, was not done. So this demarcation of this boundary came in 1976. So what used to happen? Just for the purpose of worship also, many fishermen used to come to this region, and they used to do fishing over here. So this, in spite of the giving of this island, a proper gesture, we saw a lot of more arrest of the Indian fishermen happening, because at that time, the conflict was there to what region belongs to India and what region belongs to Sri Lanka with respect to the maritime region. There were various disputes that were happening. So what happened? They thought that we need to again renegotiate the 1974 agreement and come to some consensus where a dispute can be resolved. So a 1976 agreement was there where the international maritime boundary, this between Sri Lanka and India, was marked, which is this boundary, this black color boundary. Now, when this was done, people thought, okay, the issues would be resolved. After that, what happened is something that basically actually impacted the relations between India and Sri Lanka. The Sri Lankan Civil War of 1983. Now you need to understand something very categorically. See here, we are not going to go into the lot of details with respect to the Civil War, but see, this is Indian Peninsular region. We have Sri Lanka over here. Now see, what happened is, during the British time, Sri Lanka was very well known for the plantation. So many people from the Tamil Nadu region were told, or let us say, brought to Sri Lanka. Right? They were brought to Sri Lanka. And we realized that in the northern region predominantly, and we know that in certain parts of the central Sri Lankan region also, the people from the Tamil region basically came. So what happened is that Sri Lanka is a country which is dominated by majorly Buddhist religion, followers of Buddhism, and the language that they speak is Sinhalese. Sinhalese. The people who came here were basically what? Tamil speaking people, and the religion was majorly Hinduism, right? Obviously, certain other religion followers were also there, majorly Hinduism. When they came, slowly during the British time, it was fine, but as time went ahead, we realized that there is a concept which says as ethnic conflicts that arose, based on, again, religion also, language also, cultural also. Now, what happened over here is, we very well know that this northern region slowly they started demanding for their rights, because majorly when we see the country being, that time Sri Lanka had actually Buddhism as its state religion also, and Sinhalese. So that means the people of other cultures were treated as a way of second-grade citizens, and that is why the places where the Tamil and the Tamil-speaking people were there were no facilities and infrastructure there. Lack of development were there. People were suffering, and because of that, what happened? A rebellious activity started there. And when the rebellious activity started, we realized over there that LTTE group was formed. It was a militant group under Prabhakaran, now which was fighting with the Sri Lankan government in order to free itself. And they wanted a separate country over here in the name of the Tamil land, in the name of Tamil land, because the people over there were Tamil. Now, this basically was escalating to its great height during this particular time, where Sri Lankan government is fighting with the LTT, who were basically Tamilians. Now what happens is that when the fishermen from actually Tamil Nadu are coming, let us say, for fishing, the coast guards of the Sri Lankan forces would again have animosity against them, because there already a civil war is going on. So this was a time when there was a deterioration of the relationships also between both the countries. But the reason behind was the cultural conflict that was there, because the fishermen who come or coming to the boundary of maritime boundary of Sri Lanka were Tamils, and already a civil war based on the Tamil versus Sinhalese ethnicity was going on. So then unusual arrest, confining them for a long time, all these things happened because of that, the civil war that was going on. This is one aspect. Next comes bottom trawling. This is again an environmental concern that happens. What does bottom trawling means? Please understand. Supposingly, let's assume this is a riverbed. Sorry, that is ocean bed or seabed, whatever you want to say. Let's take another color. This is the ocean bed or floor, sea floor, what we say, right? Let us assume. Now, let us assume this is the level of water, right? All water is here, right? And you see over here a ship or a boat of the fishermen being here, right? Bottom trawling basically involves that they tend to put a very large net for fishing over here, which basically touches the ground also, the sea floor. So what happens is it tends to destroy the ecology of the sea floor. It harms the, let us say, ecology. Along with it, what happens is very often it is assumed that for the fishermen, fishes of a larger size of what is required, right? Because if you want to sell, over here, small fishes also get caught, which are not useful, but when they get caught, they obviously die when they're taken out of water. So what happens because of that? It not only destroys the ecology and environment, along with it, those fishes which later on you had to mature because they are smaller right now, they die because they're caught in the net. Because the net used have very fine small holes, so they cannot escape out of the net. Now what happens because of this is the Sri Lankan fishermen who do not have those facilities for even bottom trawling, or who do not have so much technology and infrastructure, if you compare it with the Tamil farmers, they tend to say that you are violating our rights, our economy, and along with it destroying the ecology of the region. So do you understand this? Why? So this bottom trawling is basically seen as destroying or impacting what? Impacting, first of all, environment. The Tamil farmers are basically using this, right? Even now, Tamil fishermen, sorry. Environment. Then what is the economy? Of whom? Of the Sri Lankan fishermen. Right? Now, the Sri Lankan government will be concerned because it is basically impacting the habitat of the fishes that are there, along with the economy of the fishermen. So they will definitely arrest more people. That is why what happens is, the moment The moment the fishermen tend to cross here, they are arrested. And what happens is one of the reasons, major reasons, is that you do not have a demarcation. You do not have any buoys placed over there, which can basically indicate as an indicator that this is the boundary. No. So what happened? They tend to move ahead. And many times it is also seen they voluntarily move ahead, because over here, a lot of good fishes, good quality fishes are found here, because this region has already been exploited through the means of fishing. Clear. So they want to explore in these regions, and that is what creates a lot of issue. So that is what is the reason which we are saying that we need to have an early meeting, so that the issue of the fishermen is basically resolved and possible agreement that comes there. So this was the issue. I hope you understood it well. Let's move ahead with the other topic. Topic 2 is Prevention of Money Laundering Act, page 5. It basically says PMLA provision cannot be used as a tool for incarceration, says the Delhi High Court. That means they cannot confine a person inside a jail using the provisions of the PMLA. Now see, PMLA is something that has been into debate quite for some time, because it is a very strict law where you can basically confine a person to a very long duration, and the onus lies on the person who is being blamed for the crime that he has committed. So let us see, first of all, when this is being said, we need to analyze what the law is and what are the issues respect to that law. Let's see. If I see the law, see here, please understand I've mentioned the sections over here also, because if you do not want to mention a section in the paper, it is absolutely fine, but the provisions is something that you should know. You can be asked in your paper. If certain sections you can remember, it is good. Otherwise, simply stating of what is mentioned here will also work. See, the section 3 basically defines the offenses of money laundering contingent upon the existence of the predicate offense. With respect to the offense, what is the offense of the money laundering has been mentioned in the section 3. Investigating authority, the CBI or the state police investigates and prosecutes the offense. Section 4 specifies the penalties of the offenses under the PMLA. Section 50 provides enforcement directorate authorities with civil court powers to summon suspects for money laundering and record their statements. Next provision is prescribed obligation. The PMLA mandates banking companies, financial institutions, and intermediaries to verify and maintain records of the client identifiers and transactions. They must also report such transaction to the Financial Intelligence Unit in a prescribed format. So basically what this provision mandates is they can even ask the financial companies with respect to any record, with respect to any particular company on which the enforcement directorate sees that they might be involved in some money laundering. So that is why all transaction details of the transaction should be kept as a record by all the banking companies, financial companies. And in case certain problem is there, or some, let us say, fugitive activities is there, or some misuse is there, automatically in the Financial Intelligence Unit will basically again ask for it and verify whether it is that it is going to investigate the matter, and in case certain things are found, then action is taken. Section 45. Section 45 of the PMLA deals with bail. It first states that no court can grant a bail for the offense under the law. Then it mentions a few exceptions. So do you realize this? It mentions exceptions, we'll see. But do you realize this over here? It is mentioned bail cannot be granted. So if you are caught in the under the PMLA Act, that is why the reasons you'll be realizing many people are in the jail and they're not getting the bail, because this by default is a law that prevents you from getting bail. Because money laundering is treated as a very huge crime, right? Now see, though it says the bail cannot be granted, it provides two exceptions. The two conditions are the provision requires the public prosecutor to be heard in bail applications when the prosecutor opposes the bail, and court must have a twin test. So this is the important thing. Let's understand. Leave that. The twin test. What has a court to see? There is a reasonable ground for believing that the accused is not guilty. Now, this is again a very important thing. The court has to believe that there is reasonable doubt that the person who is basically being charged of a crime is not guilty. Now, see, reasonable grounds for believing. Now, again, it is the onus of the judge to be, depending upon what the debate in the conversation or arguments are being presented in the court, the court or the judge should be satisfied there is reasonable belief that he might not have done. And because on that premise, a bail can be granted. Second, he is not likely to commit an offense while on bail. That means when he is on offense, he will not commit a crime. So these are two things. So that means again, an aspect of behavioral dimension is coming, where the judge has to presume and assume that this person will not commit a crime on bail. And second is that based on what is the arguments that are presented in front of the judge has to see that there is reasonable grounds on which this person might have not committed the crime, and that is why I am granting him bail. So this is again with respect to a lot of subjectivity, unlike the other laws where you realize that proper specific statements are given. Bail can be granted, what is the duration, what are the aspect, what is payroll, and all things are granted. Over here, presented. But in this case, what is there? It is based on subjectivity, right? And that is why it becomes really difficult for the judge also to give the bail in these cases. Similar provisions in other laws. There are similar provisions in other laws deals with offenses. For example, Section 36A of the Drugs and Cosmetics Act, Section 37 of Narcotics Act. These are basically being combined. These drug aspects are basically being combined with the PMLA Act, because the offenses committed under this can also be charged under the PMLA, because money laundering aspects are associated with drug cartels also. Next, educating authority. PMLA establishes an educating authority with the jurisdiction, power, and authority conferred. Appellate tribunal. Additionally, an appellate tribunal is envisaged to appeal against the orders of the educating authority, such as the director of FIU and IAD. Then there are special courts that are there. Then there are international agreements under which we are basically working, and why PMLA Act has been passed. So little bit what you need to remember is that there is offenses defined, investigating authorities, CBI. Obviously, we have, it empowers the ED also to summon and take, let us say, measures with respect to the any possible offense that might have been committed. And then there is prescribed obligations. Then there's certain section that no bail can be granted. There are then two conditions where the court can basically grant bail. Then you see similar provision in other laws in order to link those drug laws or drug aspects or narcotics acts with the PMLA. Then you have certain educating authority, appellate authority, and that are based on the international agreement. So these are certain things. You don't have to go in detail, but little bit headings you should be knowing when it comes in the examination, right? Now comes the problem is issues with the PMLA. Have you analyzed the provisions? Now comes what are the issues prevailing to that. That is why the Delhi High Court has said you are basically misusing the provisions of PMLA and keeping a person inside a court. And the court is again, because of follow the concept of procedure established by law. Along with it, bail not being granted. So what happens, it creates a burden on the court also that it is being misused. So what is going on is against the fundamental right. Please see there is section 19 of the PMLA where the enforcement directorate, while arresting a person, is merely required to give ground for the arrest. There is no need for any prior FIR. That means enforcement directorate, if let us say they have some evidence based on certain data they have got, let us assume that, they do not need a prior FIR for that. They will go to the person that we assume and presume that you have committed a crime and we are arresting you. This is again, this basically is against the constitutional fundamental right, which is Article 21, right to life and personal liberty. Right? So it basically goes against this provision itself. So this is one of the major concerns, incorporation of various unrelated subjects. Please understand, under the international agreements of the United Nations, the major linkage of the Money Laundering Act was with the drug cartels, where drugs was being as a major means of, let us say, money laundering. That was a major international agreement. But what has happened is with repeated amendments, even the petty or smaller offenses have also been brought under PMLA. So it is being misused, where a person who might have committed a very small offense, you can charge him under PMLA and then can confine him in the court, in the jail. So why? That is why PMLA has gone beyond the laundering of drug money and created a lot of subjectivity. Now it is on the basis of the onus of the educating authorities and also the ED and the CBI that they can basically charge a person under PMLA and they can be confined in a jail for a very long duration. That is what the Honorable Delhi High Court is pointing out. That is why, see, that is why the Delhi High Court is pointing out the similar thing that is being presented in the law. Next, we move ahead. Uncontrolled discretion of authorities. That is, ED can carry out activities without the prior consent of the concerned state. You realize that, for example, CBI has to let us conduct an investigation in a state. You will be realizing that the CBI has to, the states have to give a yes or a consent to the CBI for the CBI to take some action or investigate a matter in a particular state. If that general consent is not given, the CBI cannot investigate, because this is, India has a federal structure. But in case of the Enforcement Directorate, an exception is given that the Enforcement Directorate does not require a prior consent from the state in case of arrest in a particular state or investigate a matter in a particular state. So this is also a point of concern. Next is against the basic structure. Again, it is very similar to this. First is the discretionary power, and the outcome is again the federal structure. After the 2019 amendment, we realized that the PMLA Act has been further strengthened, but it has been in a way going against the federal structure, because once the Enforcement Directorate can go to states and do arrest without the consent of the local police authorities, it is going against the federal structure of the Constitution, which is a basic structure of the Constitution. Next is tough on bail. We have already seen that. It is very tough on bail because the first step is rejection of the bail. And even if the bail is granted, there are two conditions which you assume that the court or the judge over there has to see that this person who is being charged might have not basically done a comment based on the grounds or the arguments that have been made. And second aspect is that if on bail, he will not commit a crime. So these are very subjective statements. That is why it is very tough on bail. So these are the issues that are being pointed out and coined or basically mentioned by the Delhi High Court, which is being misused for arresting people also. So this is a important aspect. Next, topic number 3, page number 6, standard veterinary treatment guidelines. Now people would assume, so why have you mentioned this? See, this topic, many might think that this is of no use, but if you realize the importance of this topic, you just need to know it, but it is very important. Why? In today's time, you will be realizing that the poultry or the livestock are being, let us say, given a lot of antibiotics so that their size increases and they can be sold in the market. But you realize because of that, multi-drug resistant are basically multi-drug resistance concept is in the market so much, because of which we realize that our immune system is very badly harmed, right? Once the bacteria is resistant to these specific set of drugs that we talk about, the antibiotics, then it is very difficult to cure the aspects of diseases that are related to the bacteria or bacteria causing diseases. So in order to resolve that issue, what is happening is the Department of Animal Husbandry has brought these standard veterinary treatment guidelines, where aims to reduce and regulate the use of antibiotics to treat diseases found in the livestock and poultry. So what was generally going on, in order to treat certain diseases that the poultry basically they're suffering, they give them antibiotics. But what happens in the due process, by not following the guidelines, what generally the people or the farmers who are basically handling the animal husbandry, they tend to give them more antibiotics. And over the time, it was realized with more antibiotics, the size of the chicken or let us say poultry livestock increases. That is beneficial for them. The misuse has been there. So awareness along with them, a certain guidelines have been given which needs to be followed. Now see, this was basically the report, Standard Veterinary Treatment Guidelines for Livestock and Poultry. First thing is, who all are covered? So these guidelines are for the non-infectious systematic diseases for the ruminants. Ruminants are basically those who derive their nutrition from the plant-based food like cows, buffaloes, goats, sheep, right? Then guidelines for infectious diseases in large ruminants, guidelines for infectious diseases for small ruminants, guidelines for parasitic diseases of animals, for the poultry diseases, for the pig diseases, camel diseases, quin diseases, methune and yak diseases. So that means this is covering all these sort of animals. This can be asked in your paper also, that under these guidelines, under the SVT guidelines, which among the following are covered? So over here, this is how they basically take out the question and create the questions. Clear? So these all are covered here. Second, objectives for the development of SVTG. I have taken out these from the actual report that was given by the Government of India, right? What are the objectives for the development of SVTG? First is to collate and review the existing standard guidelines that are available globally, identify and procedure conditions for the development of standard veterinary guidelines, suggest principles and protocols as per the global guidelines, develop SVTG document, keeping in mind what are the problems in the country. Expected outcomes, standard veterinary treatment guidelines, that will be a reference guide. So basically, please remember over here, when these things are being worked out over here, the focus over here is that once these guidelines have been presented, and if you open a guideline, we're realizing every diseases, how it has to be dealt, how amount of, or what amount of, let us say, antibiotic needs to be given, what are the alternatives, and all these things have been mentioned. So we will be realizing that the outcome would be a proper, let us say, a standard operating procedure would be established. A system would be created where excessive of antibiotics would not be present in the poultry and the livestock. Third, it is not going to harm the human beings who are basically consuming them. Fourth, it is not going to harm the ecology and environment, because once you're giving a lot of antibiotics, it tends to basically go in the surroundings and even the soil. And that tends to harm the human and the land and the soil relationship. So in a long way, what is going on? It is trying to aim for establishment of a healthy land, human and animal relationship, which is based on the principle of sustainable development. That is what is being done, so that the excessive use of antibiotics in case of the animals is avoided. And again, we will not say completely avoided. There has to be medicines based on antibiotics, but they should be regulated in a way, and the optimum, what is the required amount, that should be strictly followed. That is what is being presented by the standard veterinary treatment guidelines for the livestock and the poultry. So this is a positive way ahead. But again, important dimension would be whether it is followed or not. If they are not followed, again, the issues will still remain the same. Okay, let's move ahead. Topic 5, exit polls issues, page number 10. We realize that though we have seen this topic earlier, also I discussed in brief, we saw that exit polls, when they basically give that this is the party that is going to win, this, that. So what happens is that it creates an expectation in the minds of the people, and the result do not come accordingly. People tend to challenge the process of the election. You're realizing that earlier on, a few days back, the Chief Election Commissioner had very categorically said that there is a lot of issue with respect to the exit polls and they need to be regulated well. So what are exit polls? Please, in simple words, understand. Supposingly you are going to cast a vote, right? There's a booth there, you cast a vote, after voting you come out. After you come out, you have certain agencies and the people who representatives are there, and they will ask you, what do you feel, who will win the election, for whom you have voted for. So based on that, they're going to collect data. That means the exit means after voting, you come out of the booth poll, and the people of the agencies who are basically conducting these polls, their representatives are basically there, and they'll ask you. Now, many are not going to reply, obviously, some will reply. So automatically the people who are being asked about the data are very limited, right? And across the world, hardly, not even 1% people are being surveyed. So what happens is that they tend to collect the data, and based on the data, they tend to give a trend that how many people are going to win the seats, which party is going to win the seats, who is going to win the seats. These trends are basically created out of that based on extrapolation. So let's see. Exit poll asks the voters which political party they are supporting. They have cast their votes in an election on which they have casted the vote. The exit poll is supposed to give an indication of which way the wind are blowing in the election, along with the issues, personalities, and loyalties that they have influenced. It differs from the opinion poll. Please remember, it differs from an opinion poll which is held before the election, right? Opinion polls are one, before the election is held, you ask people who are you going to vote for. That is opinion poll. Exit poll is after voting, you come out. That is the thing. Now, exit polls in India are conducted by a number of organizations, often tie-ups with a media organization. These surveys can be conducted face-to-face or even online. Now comes with respect to the evolution and rules that are governing the exit poll. Now see, historically, during the second Lok Sabha elections in 1957, Indian Institute of Public Opinion had conducted such a poll. It was considered the first such exercise. So this is historical dimension. That means 1957 also we saw a similar trend over there. That time people did not have television and all. These are basically published in the newspapers to such an extent, right? Then what are the rules that are regulating? Article 324 of the Constitution says that Election Commission prohibits newspapers and news channels from publishing results of pre-election surveys and exit polls during the voting. You cannot, during the voting process, publish any of such data, because the elections are already held in large phases and many states undergo the election, so you cannot publish it. It was mandatory for the channels and newspapers to disclose the sample size of the electorate and details of the polling methodology, the margin of error, and the background of the polling agency during the publishing. In the absence of statutory backing, these guidelines could not be implemented. So, though these guidelines are mentioned, there was no law created out of it, so these guidelines are not being implemented. So what happens is the same process of randomly voting without disclosing the electoral size, without the survey size, sample size, and methodology. Organizations are basically conducting these surveys based on their whims and fancies and giving a result, tying up with various media organizations. Now what happens? This is one is this. Second is Section 126A of Representation of People Act 1951. Exit and opinion polls are banned by making amendment in the section for the period specified by the commission. See, banned, for the matter when the election is going on, you cannot publish the exit poll. So that means they're banned during that time. Punishment, a 2-year prison or a fine or both for the agency. Recent changes, the Election Commission of India has barred media organization from displaying the results of the exit polls before votes are cast. Media houses can show the results only after the last vote has been cast and no future voting is left in that part of jurisdiction, or for that matter, to just prevent or preventing the influence of that voting that is being there, let us say the poll that is being displayed on the other people. So in order to prevent that, so have a free and fair election, these cases or these changes have been made. So we realize that certain evolution and certain rules that are basically governing them. Now, if you understand what are the limitations of the electoral prediction. See, first of all, margin of error by nature do include a margin of error. This could be small size or inadequate representation. So there is, because the sample size is very small, who's been surveyed. So when the result that is being predicted might be different because the size that you had taken was very small. Another thing is with respect to, again, inadequate representation means that large number of people were not there who were basically surveyed while the data was being collected. Second, shy voters. Shy voters is the voter may not give their actual preferences due to fear of the political predictions. That means supposingly a person voted for party B, but when he comes out, he says, no, I voted for party A. So in that case, you cannot do anything. You will go with what the person has said. So that means the result would be very different from what one has expected. Third, absentee voters. It does not cover absentee voters who may vote through the postal ballots. So you realize postal ballots are done even prior to the actual voting taking place. So large number of postal ballots are there. So in that case, you do not have data about them. So over there, this is known as absentee voters. So these are limitations. These are basically not being considered. Along with it, we have the criticisms. Please understand, biased reporting. In many countries, exit polls have been criticized for biased opinion. Why? There can be various organizations who are even owned by, let us say, the political parties. They might give the opinion polls according to the whims and fancies of the political parties. What happens that we assume or presume that these are biased opinions, right? Next, early predictions. Early winner predictions could discourage voters from exercising their votes. So what happens is that if winner prediction is there, then what happens in the future cases, let us say the elections are taking place, people will believe that what is the need for voting, only one particular party will win, and all such opinions come into being. So that is discouraging the voters from voting in the future elections also. Political favoritism, there is allegations that agencies publishing are financed by rival political parties do influence election. Now, one was why certain parties can be in favor of the political parties also, and then in case there can be money given to those agencies to give a wrong opinion about the other political party also. So that is means political favoritism. Again, a small sample size is mentioned, and public opinion by nature is obviously varies from situation to situation where people can give wrong opinions also. So that subjectivity has not taken. So when you're talking about criticism, you can basically present these things also under the category of criticism. Another problem that happens is the aspect of expectation. What is this? Expectation, that means the people have a expectation in the mind when the exit poll is released that, okay, this particular party is going to win. Now, we have in mind, let us say this party will win and that party doesn't win. So that means what happens? The expectation of the people cautious. So that creates a wrong atmosphere with respect to what the expectation or what has been. So what results? That results in questioning of the election procedure plus the election bodies. So that basically then leads to a wrong atmosphere where the bodies conducting the elections are being questioned. That is why even the chief election commissioner said that there is issue with the problem of the um, exit polls that are being conducted, right? So let's move ahead. Now, this is an editorial that has been taken. Please understand, very important thing. This whole article is based on a report that was presented by the government of India. The name of the report is Relative Economic Performance of the Indian States from 1960-61 to 2023-24. That means how the performance of the states have been from 1960-61 to 2023-24. And this was given by the Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister. See over here, this is basically the report that was basically presented, and we will see the dimensions associated with it. So this basically talks about the region-wise growth of various regions and why certain states are lagging behind, why regional disparities are there. So these things have been mentioned. So you can use this report even in your papers also, in prelims and mains, both is important. So he talks about, see, that the importance of each state. So this report, under this article, basically what is mentioned, he talks about that every state has a very important role to play in the country's economy. And that is being represented and presented through this particular report. He says that the problem that arises is that there are regional disparities, not only between the states, but also within the state. For example, he says that Maharashtra is contributing the highest to the economy, right? But it has a largest slum also in Dharavi. So there is a large disparity that is existing within the state. Now, as we move ahead, we realize that better performance has been observed by the western and the southern states. So there are various factors behind that. Their location, government policies, education of the people, the public expenditure, government policies, and all these things do influence it. So we realize that the western and southern countries have been better performers with respect to the economy, import, export, or let us say trade policies, development in respect to economic contribution to the nation. They have been better performers. But the northern states have been poor performers, except for the state of Haryana and the Union Territory of Delhi, which have been again doing well. Haryana primarily because of the Gurgaon, Faridabad, and other satellite towns which are developing around it. So it is basically boosting its economy a lot. Along with it, we realize that Delhi itself is an economic hub, capital of India. So it is also a major contributory, right? As we move ahead, we realize that the editorial mentions that there are various issues coming up, right? Various issues coming up. He says that richer states are not getting a fair share. What happened recently, a meeting of the southern states happened in the state of Kerala, where a discussion was being going on, like the southern states, which are basically contributing to a large amount to the economy of India, they are not getting their due share from the side of the central government. So they say that we should get a fair share because we are contributing more, so much to the taxes. So the Finance Commission report should also recommend in a way that these states are contributing so much, so more provision should be made for these particular states, which are again a contention, one of contention, which is basically being discussed between the central government as well as the southern Dravidian states. As we move ahead, he mentions various factors which have basically impacted the growth over these years from 1960s to 2023, and it has impacted the countries in different ways. Firstly, like liberalization. When we see about liberalization, 1991, we realized that large number of companies coming into India. We saw places like Mumbai, we saw places like Bangalore later on, we saw Delhi, Chennai, all these places basically coming up and booming. Now we have other states like places like Hyderabad, Pune, Mysore, these also growing up. So what happened? The reason was that liberalization of the policies impacted the various places in various states, and large number of them have been in the southern states. It has got a lot to do with the policies of the southern states. Educated workforce is present there. Congenial environment is there. For example, if you go to Bangalore, you'll be realizing that even during the time of the rainy season, you will not be sweating. So the weather conditions are very suitable, and that is why various companies basically came and started their businesses over there. Along with it, yes, there were the liberal policies of the state of Karnataka during that time, which basically attracted a lot of investment. Now, this is being done in other parts like Hyderabad now. So we realize that the southern states were very advanced during that perspective. If we go, second is investment. Now we see that large investment, first was the liberalization factor, which has basically impact the development of the countries, development of the states, along with it investment. Now see, when we talk about investment, he says that investment basically depends upon large number of factors. Why certain states received a lot of investment and they tend to, they were developing or developed a lot. First, like policy decision making. So what policy decision making? Has there been red tapeism in the government? Is there easy facilitation of the companies coming up? So that basically impacts it. Next is profitability. If the company wants to invest, will there be market over there? Can they profit from there? Third is urban areas. Please remember the areas, the regions which had form of urban settlement being there, the companies are going to invest over there majorly. Why? Because in the regions of the urban areas, there is more demand. There is more infrastructure. There are more facilities there. On the other hand, those regions which are primarily rural in nature, or states which are primarily rural in nature, did not benefit from this because the companies would be investing in the regions where urban areas are there. Clear? So as we move ahead, similarly, we saw the coastal areas developing a lot. There are certain exceptions, but we realize that coastal areas, why Mumbai, for that matter, Chennai, and these regions developed a lot. Just because the coastal states provide a easy access to, let us say, some import from the other countries and even for export. So it is easier to establish the SEZs in those regions. So they tend to become the export hubs, and that is why the coastal states tend to benefit a lot. And that is why you realize the southern states are majorly coastal states, except for Telangana. Though Telangana has Hyderabad as a major source of revenue, but other states are majorly coastal states, and they did benefit from their geography. And that is why you realize one more thing that happened is these were one of the other reasons why the southern states also benefited a lot with respect to the development. Now, please understand that as we move ahead, we see that richer states, because of these things, received more investment. Now you will be realizing if you go to Bihar, Bihar did not receive any private sector investment as a large scale. Why? First, we will be seeing that government policy measures over there have not been so liberal with respect to the investment. The infrastructure already is confined to the region of Patna. If you move out, you will not be finding any good infrastructure. Third, you will be seeing the youth basically moving out of the state of Bihar and moving to other regions. Then along with it, you realize that law and order and crime issues also basically refrain the investment from going there. So these regions are gone along with the corruption and the red tapeism that is there that prevented the investment from taking place. But on the other aspects, if you see the states of Gujarat and Maharashtra, you have single window clearances over there. You have to present it, the plan, and it is cleared without, if there are certain issues, obviously they can be pointed out. They are very easily cleared and the investment can take place. So these are the dimension within states also. We see that the problems are there. So that is where richer states, because they were richer because of the facilities they provided and obviously the infrastructure that they created, they started receiving more and more investment. So there was a multiplier effect. And those which were poorer states tend to become more poorer, had remained poor unless and until they did a lot of work with respect to their investment aspects, or let us say public expenditure was there. Now we need to realize that the private investment occupies close to 75% of the investment. Now, if you realize that this is a huge quantum, if you are not able to attract the private investment, obviously the state is going to suffer. And the private investment can only be attracted if you have all these things which are there. And that is why certain states are becoming richer and the others are not. If we move ahead, we realize that poorer states have a large number of unorganized sector, majorly unorganized sector. So what happens, the unorganized sector, the ones who are basically not paying those, let us say, income taxes also, they're not organized, they're earning also less. So that has a ripple effect in the economy also. And if you go to the richer states, they have more organized sectors, people more in the organized economy. So government also benefits to the tax collection, to the expenditure that is made. So this again tends to make the poorer states even poorer. Now, next aspect is that another dimension is mentioned, the black economy and the parallel economy. It is seen that the poorer states have, as a percentage wise of the total economy, greater percentage of the black economy in the poorer states. Why? Because over there, the law enforcement or let us say the awareness of the people is not so much. They can be easily exploited by the government officials also. And if you go to states like the tribal states, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, you will be realizing that a lot of nefarious activities are done with respect to illegal mining. Why? Because the tribal people they assume that can be easily subjugated, can be easily made to keep quiet because they do not know their rights. So what happens that a lot of parallel economy works as a greater percentage of the economy in comparison to the richer states. Next is the other thing, and the last that he mentions is that it is important if you want to resolve this issue, the center and states need to work together. A proper planning with respect to how the state can basically capitalize on the stronger areas and improve on the weak areas is something that needs to work, irrespective of what the party is in power. You need to learn from the better performing states and move ahead towards their development. If that is not there, then regional disparities will increase. There have these regions based, these things are basically pointing towards the regional disparities that are there. First, like the liberalization, decision-making ability of the governments, and we realize the infrastructure that is there, whether the large number of areas, urban areas are there or not. Then along with it, we realize that what type of, let us say, is there red tapeism or not? Then along with it, we realize that what type of weather or geography is there. That also influences it. Then whether it is a coastal state or not, that also influences, because again, the geographical dimension is coming. So next thing is what effort the state is taking with respect to attracting investment also. We realize that there's a concept of para-diplomacy. Para-diplomacy basically works on the aspect where even the states can basically act, or let us say connect with the other countries in order to attract investment. These efforts are being made by which countries? So these things become important. Over here, you need the help of the central also and the other states also, which are doing their good and implement in their states, especially those are the poorer states. If we go ahead, we'll be realizing that these were certain dimensions with respect to the regional growth that have been mentioned in the report. They say that southern states, Karnataka, Andhra, Telangana, since the economic liberalization of 1991, southern states have emerged as the leading performers. They now collectively account for approximately 30% of the India's GDP. Kerala, only southern state which saw share in the GDP dip. Please understand, West Bengal and Kerala are certain exceptions. Why? For a long duration, they were under the left government, which basically prevented the private investment from taking place in their states. And that is why they could not reap the benefit as the other coastal states. That is why over here, Kerala saw a dip in the GDP, right? Its share increased from 3.1 this much to peak and then dropped to 3.8 in 2024. This is with respect to Kerala. Western region, Maharashtra and Gujarat are their per capita income estimated above the national average since 1960s. In 2023, they account for 160% increase and 150% increase. Goa per capita income has doubled over this period, primarily because of the tourism industry. West Bengal, the third largest with 10% of 10.5% of the national GDP, it has also declined to 5.6% in 23. Again, West Bengal and Kerala have gone down because the government of the left basically prevented private investment for a long time, which the benefit was taken by Maharashtra and Gujarat and the other states. So Odisha has relatively per capita income increased. Again, even that is majorly a tribal states, is per capita has increased. Bihar, a relatively position stabilized in the last 2 decades. Delhi, per capita income has increased. Punjab, again, it has basically gone down from 1196 from the, let us say, the rate at which the income was increasing has gone down because of movement of the industries out from Punjab to other places where uncongenial environment was created in Punjab to, let us say, lack of proper, let us say, infrastructure in the regions that were required, policy decision making issues. All these dimensions basically prevented the industry from basically coming there or developing its roots there. Along with it, a lot of corruption and red tapeism basically has spoiled the atmosphere of the industry in Punjab. That is why people started moving out from that region to Haryana, Gurgaon, and other regions. That is why if you realize a fall in the per capita income with respect to the industry, one of the industries is a major region that moved out, right? So for Haryana, it has increased. UP, it has increased. In Madhya Pradesh also, it has increased, right? So let's move ahead. Prelims topics. So we have Ayurveda Divas. Please understand this was in page number 1. On page number 1, the term Ayurveda basically denotes knowledge of life. The government of India has been observing Ayurveda every year on Dhanvanti Jayanti, that is Dhanteras, since 2016 to raise awareness about the Ayurveda principles, herbs, and lifestyle. Please remember, when we talk about Dhanteras, we obviously tend to think about an aspect of jewelry, right? The articles come. But remember, as the government has rightly pointed out, Dhanteras, on Ayurveda being celebrated on Dhanteras, basically it denotes that the real wealth is our health. If you are not healthy, then what will happen? Whether you have billions of rupees, if you have no wealth, no reason or no benefit. That is why Ayurveda, that means it denotes a sustainable lifestyle, leading a simple and a healthy life is what is a real wealth. That is why on the day of Dhanteras, right? On the day of Dhanteras, we basically, the Ayurveda is being celebrated. If we move ahead, this year, the theme was Ayurveda Innovation for Global Health, right? This was a theme which was basically we had for this year's Ayurveda Day. Next, topic 2, paper 4, page 4, Civil Registration Act app has been there. So this civil registration system has been there for a long time, but an app has been created now. So that is why we need to know a little bit about it. Civil registration system, it was formed in 1969, 55 years ago, jurisdiction Government of India. Agency is the Registrar General of India, and it is parent body's Ministry of Home Affairs. Clear? Now see, civil registration system is a unified process of continuous, permanent and compulsory universal recording of the events of birth, death and stillbirth. So it is basically keeping a register of whether how many are born, dying, stillbirth are taking place. So it has a record of that. Now, data generated through these are important for the socio-cultural planning. And with that, the website was there, but now the app has been created. So that is why it has been in news. So you can be asked a little bit from the figures or stats that have been given here. So you should be knowing this. Next is Bandhavgarh Tiger Reserve. It was present on page 4, topic 3, with respect to 4 elephants died in this. So this is in Madhya Pradesh. This is the Bandhavgarh Tiger Reserve in this particular region over here. So from the geographical aspect also it is clear. It is located between the Vindhyan and the Satpura range in the Umaria district of Madhya Pradesh. It is declared a national park in 1968 and a tiger reserve in 1993. Habitat is characterized by valleys, hills and plains. All the three things are over here. Vegetation, tropical, moist and deciduous forest with mixed forest and grasslands. Bamboo is also found. Royal Bengal tigers, leopards, wild dog, wolf, barking, sambar, cheetal and chinkara are also found over here. If we move ahead, topic 4, National Pharmaceutical Pricing Authority, page 6 was present, which basically has cut the prices of the anti-cancer drugs. So let us see what it is basically. Please understand, NPPA was formed in 1997. Headquarters is in Delhi. Then it is basically under the Department of Pharmaceuticals, that is Ministry of Chemicals and Fertilizers, right? Now coming to the official document, which is from the Government of India. What are the functions of NPPA? See, to implement and enforce the provisions of the drug price control order. That means it is the authority which enforces and implements the provisions that are under the drug price control order. To undertake or sponsor relevant studies with respect to the pricing of the drugs. That means what should be the prices, whether it is increased, whether it has to be decreased. All those studies are also carried on by them. To monitor the availability of drugs, identify shortages if any. To collect and maintain data on the production, export, import, market share of the individual companies and the profitability of the companies related to pharmaceutical sector. To deal with legal matters arising out of the decisions of the authority. To tender advice to the central government of the changes and revision of the drug policy. And to render assistance to the central government in the parliamentary matters. So that means every matter related to the drug pricing, let us say what the price roughly should be, or let us say suggestions to be made with respect to the central government under the drugs price control order. All these things are basically its function, which we have seen. Now, which we have heard right now, drugs price control order. Please understand what it is. The Drug Price Control Order 2013, which basically states that prices of drugs in India are regulated by the provisions of the Drug Price Control 2013 by the NPPA under the Department of Pharmaceuticals. So what is DPCO? That is, what is Drugs Price Control Order? It controls the prices of all essential medicines by fixing a ceiling or the limiting the highest price that a company can charge. Now you realize that in India, we do not, majorly when the medicines that are basically essential in nature, there's a price cap that is placed on them. Otherwise, it will be unaffordable for majority. That is seen in countries like United States. So in order to prevent that, we have the DPCO, which is basically what is the function of NPPA? You will be realizing it implements the drug price control order, right? So in order to maintain the prices of the drugs. So similarly, it also has national list of essential medicines is drawn up to include the essential medicines to satisfy the priority health needs of the population. Role of NPPA again is fixes the ceiling price of the scheduled medicines. It also fixes the retail price of the new drugs. And for non-scheduled formulations, a manufacturer is at the liberty of fixing his maximum retail price. Again, for the scheduled drugs, again, a restriction is placed. For non-scheduled drugs, obviously you can fix according to the MRP, but certain restrictions have been there. Now, we often hear about Schedule H drugs, Schedule J, Schedule K drugs. So there's a list over here. Again, this has been added. Now, if UPSC wants to pull your leg, it can ask you. But over here, certain categories have been mentioned. You can just roughly go through them. Like Schedule A R contains various formulas and formats of application for us using granting licenses. Over H, which are the one which are restricted unless and until the prescription is there. So there are various things and criteria. So whether you don't have to basically go through it because it becomes otherwise difficult for you to recollect. But I mentioned it over here because this, if UPSC wants to pull your leg, can ask you. So these are certain schedules under which the drugs are placed. Clear? Okay, let's move ahead. Topic 5, page 14, United Nations Relief and Work Agency for Palestine Refugees. So what is UNRWA? See, it was basically founded in 1949 to provide to aid about the 7 lakh Palestinians who were forced to leave their homes in the 1948 Arab-Israel war, which we had done yesterday when we were discussing the Arab-Israel issue. The region of operations, the UN agency operates in Gaza, Israel-occupied West Bank, Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, in these regions to provide them shelter and medicines and required aid. Provision of the services, it plays a pivotal role in providing livelihood to the residents of Gaza who have been forced into humanitarian crisis, who had to leave their houses because of the war that was going on. And even now they continue with the same activities as right now, again, the war is continuing. Provide them shelter, water, food, or the essential commodities that are required. Funding is funded almost entirely by the voluntary contributors, by donors, and states like even the United States is contributing to that. So this is, again, it gets a limited subsidy from UN. So that means, again, you need to focus on the voluntary contribution that are made. Okay, let's move ahead. War in Sudan has displaced more than 14 million. Again, there is a lot of ethnic wars that are going on between between Sudan and the South Sudan. And now please understand that what is important for us over here is the body mentioned International Organization for Migration. This is important. Topic 6, page 15. It was established in 1951 as a part of United Nations system. Head office is in Grand Saconnex in Switzerland. 175 members. India is a member. That is important. It aims to ensure the orderly and human management of the migration, to promote international cooperation on the migration issues. Status, IOM was given a permanent observer status by the UN General Assembly in 1992, and a cooperation agreement between IOM and UN have been signed in 1996. So what are the work areas? Migration and development, facilitating migration, regulating migration, forced migration, dealing the issues with respect to that. Major reports, it presents a World Migration Report. New strategic plan. According to the International Organization for Migration, most recent strategic plan, organization 3 key goals with respect from 2024 to 28 are to save the lives and protect the persons in transit, promote solution to displacement, and facilitate paths on regular migration. So that means those people are suffering who want to migrate because of the issues that they're facing, or for that matter, any matter, whether it is climate-related migration, or whether it is war-related migration, ethnic conflict-related migration, or people want to migrate because of work for that matter, and certain issues are there. All these things come under this gamut that is being presented over here. Yeah, let's move ahead. Over here, one definition has been written, who is a migrant with respect to the International Organization of Migration. It becomes important to understand that. A migrant is a person who moves away from his or her place of usual residence, whether within a country or across an international border, temporarily or permanent, or for a variety of reasons. So you will realize that any reason, whether it is a conflict or even peaceful movement, the issues or dimensions concerning them will come under this. If we move ahead, let us do the MCQs. Please attempt the question. Second question, attempt it. Third question, please attempt it. Fourth question, please attempt it. This is the first part. These are the complete question. This is long, wrong. This is long. So next part is in the next page. Please note it down. And then these are the, again, the statements that are there. Again, I'm showing you. This is the question part. These are the statements of question number 4. Then you have question 5. Then you have the question 6, right? Now you have question number 7 with respect to census. Question 8 with respect to dry port. Solution for first, second is A, third is D, fourth is B. Explanation. 5 is A, 6 is C, 7 is C, 8 is A, and okay, sorry, this was another article. So this was basically the aspect. Yeah. Hopefully you enjoyed the analysis. Hopefully you learned something out of it. This was today's analysis from the Hindu, and we have done it from a very comprehensive manner. We'll be even adding whatever is required, but majorly this is what is required from the analysis, from the prelims and the mains perspective. If you do it holistically, it will be very helpful for your examination. Take care and Jai Hind.